Professor Puddlewhisk's rainy rescue. Deep in the heart of Drizzlewood Forest, where the moss is always soft and the air smells like wet earth, lived Professor Puddlewhisk. He was a very round, very purple cat who loved the rain more than anything else. He wore a pair of oversized goggles to keep his eyes dry and always carried a tiny, polka-dotted umbrella that perched perfectly between his ears. One afternoon, the clouds turned a deep shade of slate, and the rain began to fall in heavy, rhythmic splashes. Patter, patter, splat, went the rain. Professor Puddlewhisk adjusted his goggles and stepped out of his hollow tree home. He loved to see how the forest changed when it was tucked under a blanket of silver mist. As he reached the edge of Pebble Brook, the professor heard a tiny, worried sound. "Help! Oh, help!" came a squeaky chorus. He looked down and saw a group of small frogs led by a little green fellow named Bramble. They were stranded on a large, wobbly lily pad in the middle of the rising water. Bramble looked up at the professor with wide, frightened eyes. Next to him, his friend Gulp was shivering. "The water is too fast for us to swim," Bramble cried. "And our leaf is starting to spin." The little frogs clung to the edges of their green boat, watching the bubbles rush past. "Don't you worry your little green heads," Professor Puddlewhisk called out. He closed his tiny umbrella and set it down carefully. "I have a plan, and it involves a bit of heavy lifting and a few silly words." He began to scan the muddy bank, looking for just the right materials for his project. The professor began to toss the pebbles into the water, one by one. Clink, clank, plunk! He was building a stepping stone bridge. He aimed each stone carefully, so they formed a steady path from the shore to the lily pad. Bramble watched from the leaf, feeling a tiny spark of hope. The bridge was almost finished, but there was still a big gap between the last stone and the leaf. Bramble was too scared to jump. Professor Puddlewhisk smiled kindly. "Why did the frog take the bus to work today?" he asked with a chuckle. Bramble blinked. "I don't know, Professor." "Why?" "Because his car got towed," the professor shouted. Bramble let out a tiny giggle, and then Gulp started to laugh too. Their fear began to melt away. "You can do it, Bramble," Gulp cheered, patting his friend on the back. "It's just a little hop, a skip, and a jump." With a deep breath and a joyful ribbit, Bramble made a brave leap onto the first stone. Then Gulp followed right behind him. Professor Puddlewhisk clapped his paws. "That's the spirit. You're as bouncy as popcorn," he encouraged, guiding them toward the safety of the shore. Soon, all the frogs were safe on the soft moss. The rain was still falling, but nobody minded anymore. "Thank you, Professor," Bramble said, shaking his little damp head. Professor Puddlewhisk picked up his tiny umbrella and smiled. "Kindness is the best umbrella for a rainy day," he said, and they all walked home together through the misty woods.